So let's start with a little bit of discussion. Can I ask you to have a minute or two maximum in your tables to try to answer that question? How would you describe digital to your parents? I was going to say to my dad, but you don't know him. But my dad types like this. So how would you describe digital to your parents? Just have a conversation in your tables very quickly. Okay, let's. Don't worry, we're not gonna come up with a definition. Okay, we can. We're not gonna come up with a definition. Don't worry. We're not even gonna attempt to come up with a final definition. But what are some ideas? Nick's gonna write them down as you shout them out. Anybody wants to give it a go? Maybe this group. Anything?
0-1.
Sorry.
0-1.
0-1. Okay, that's a good one. 0-1. One more. Please. Could you? Okay.
Using buttons to control something.
Using buttons to control something. Okay.
Everything what is related with new technologies, it doesn't matter if it's a computer, for example, or a telephone.
Okay, new technologies, computer, telephones, anything on the back?
I wouldn't even start explaining them.
You can't start explaining, no. All the way back to front, there's somebody here.
Anything electronic.
Anything electronics, okay. That table.
Well, anything faster than normal.
Anything faster than normal. So Usain Bolt is he digital? Okay. This group, anybody else? There's one more.
Electronic on and off.
Online? Oh, electronic on and off. Okay. One more? There's just one there over there.
I'll do one more. Anything that you can't use when you're taking off on the airplane.
That's a good one. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So before I said enough, let's report back. Nick came over and said, gave me some ideas of things that are digital but not online. I'm going to let Nick come in and try to give us a sort of idea of what he means, or what, as a digital manager of digital communications in ODI, what he means by digital.
Okay. I think the thing to say is digital is often synonymous with online, but actually what digital is in its Wikipedia definition, it is just electronic information and the transfer of electronic information. However, I think that usually in modern usage, and when we're talking about this session, I think the important thing is it's the delivery happens electronically. It's a communication, a connection, rather than just information stored on a hard disk. It's information that's been transferred from one hard disk to another hard disk, and the way it's transferred. A good quote from a UK politician in the government, a cabinet minister, Francis Maude. He said last week in a speech about UK digital efforts, he said, digital is not a channel, it's not a way of communicating, it's a delivery choice, but for a modern generation. So it's a way in which information is delivered, and that information is electronic.
So it can be offline. It doesn't have to be online. But thanks, Nick. But during the session, we're going to be exploring some of these things, because to be entirely honest with you, I mean, I worked in ODI for many years, and Nick came in with great ideas about this world. And for a very long time, I was completely against Twitter and against any of these things, and I thought it was just a waste of time. So I can't play the very skeptical card. And I worked in developing countries in a think tank in Peru when I started my career. I'm originally from Peru, and I said, I know that it's not the same, that the context isn't the same. But I want to play a bit challenging role here and suggest that the situation, the context in which your organizations operate is changing, whether we like it or not, or whether it's happening to us directly or not, the greater context is changing, and we've got to do something about it. So, typical kind of questions I ask when we start talking about digital and what to do about it is, let's ask ourselves, whether the world around us is changing in the way in which we access information. Can you think in the way that you access information now and then maybe 4 years ago? Has that changed? Do you access information in the same way? Do you still go to the library to look for books and see what it says? Or do you check Wikipedia? Do you text people? Do you call? How do you access information? Has that changed? And I think it has. And it's changing as we go. I almost don't Google anymore. I just follow interesting people and organizations on Twitter, and they send me information. I realized that the other day. I had not thought about it, but I realized I do not Google. I haven't done a proper Google search in a very long time for work. The way we collaborate, the way we manage our connections, the way we manage our teams. Do you do it face-to-face, or do you do it by email? Do you do it by text? Do you do it by phone? What about fundraising? There are loads of initiatives out there. NGOs are taking advantage of these for crowdfunding, getting funding, bits of funding, one at a time. Maybe you know people who have been using these tools to fundraise for charity runs and things like that. So there are all these tools out there, and we're using them, and people are getting used to use them and more comfortable with them. I know that in many developing countries, using the internet to pay for things is still not there yet. Certainly in Peru, for instance, isn't there yet. But it's coming along. And the way we share information, the way we communicate with our friends, with our colleagues, with our peers, the way you access information about things you want to know about, not just the way you research, but more and more we start to read the newspapers online. We look at them on our phones. We do download something and then read it on the plane, even though it's not connected to the web. We watch films, we watch TV shows. We no longer own the CDs. We no longer own the hard copies of things. So things have been changing. The question is whether going digital means that we just make small changes about these things to adapt to new technologies, or whether this actually signals a bigger change in society that means we need to change as organizations. And more or less that's what I want to talk about. So there are two scenarios. I won't take too long, Peter, I promise. One is a huge disruption that is going to happen right away, and that in this new digital scenario, the change is so big that it forces us to reconsider how we work, how a think tank works. Okay? It means that you have to share ideas rather than own them. And we talked about that yesterday. It's about letting go of your ideas really quickly, because there's nothing you can do about it. As soon as you tweet something, as soon as you put something on your website, it will be taken up by somebody else. In the new world of social media, you've got to promote others' work, not just yourself. If you start sort of only putting out there what's yours, you're not going to have enough. You're not going to have enough things to communicate and to share, and quickly people are going to lose interest of you and your work. It's about personal relations. Even though it's online or it's digital, it's through ones and zeros, it's actually, it's easier to now follow individuals. I didn't know Bakar, but I was able to follow him on Twitter. I was able to look him up, and I get to know him at a distance, and then I get to understand more where he comes from and his work. So it's about making individuals in the organization rather than the organization important. It's about co-opting people on a mission. It's about working across our own limits. So collaborating with organizations, not having your own desk space, not having your own organization space. You can now set up a think tank, if you think about it, with no startup cost. Just a bunch of researchers who can meet together, and they can use a lot of tools that Nick's going to talk about to run their operation without having to actually put any cash down. Maybe £20, $20 for the domain name of your organization, but that's about it. The rest you can do free. So the world is changing, and it doesn't mean that think tanks need to change dramatically. The other scenario is that the world is changing, but not yet. And I think in many of your countries, the world hasn't changed yet. The internet is not that fast, the technology is so expensive, and people are getting used to trying these new technologies, but they're not massive. So it's time. So the question is, can we evolve in time to be successful in this new world? And what will it take? What kind of changes will this take? Nick and Bakar are going to talk about this. But before we get into what to do, I want to point out that you don't all have to start with communication. There's a lot of emphasis on how to communicate in new ways. So how to use new technologies to communicate, right? But actually, it depends on your organization. Some organizations are more, I don't know if this has a point to it. Some organizations are more academic. Other organizations are more about values and interests. And think tanks, they exist in a range of spaces. They can move around. Some will be more about sort of theoretical research. Other ones will be more about applied work. Other ones will be about campaigning. Some will be more about advocacy. Some will be about more contracts. And some will have more independent research, depending on your business models. So I would suggest that you think about what works for each one of you. So for your organizations, trying new digital tools might work best. For instance, if you are a fairly academic kind of think tank, if you are associated or linked to a university, if the core of your work is actually long-term research, then maybe try to explore tools that will help you to do your research, that will help you to move into that digital world while doing research. I mean, you all do. You have Stata and SPSS and eViews, but also you can now use mobiles to collect data more easily. You can use tablets to share information more easily, etc. So there are many tools you can explore. The same with if you're a contract-driven think tank. If you've got lots of projects, then what tools can help you to keep your accounts, to project manage, to collaborate, to share information among team members who might not be working in the same office all the time? So what tools can you use to develop that capacity? If you're more an advocacy-oriented think tank, and there was a bit of talk about that yesterday, then clearly your thing is more to do with communications. Right? So it's not just about communications. It's also about the way we manage our organization and the way we do research, which is the core for all of you. And you're going to face huge amounts of challenges. How far and how fast? Nick said something to me the other day. We were talking about this, and we said, should we be early adopters? No, I think we should be early. We should let others test it for us. You shouldn't be just taking on whatever new technology comes along because it's expensive to make a mistake for you. So watch others test these technologies and then maybe join. Test new tools in projects, small projects, and see what you can do with Dropbox or Google Drive or some of these things. Avoid isolated and disconnected things. I often get the question, I want to set up a blog. Okay, but what is that connected to? Is it going to be linked to your website? Who is going to write in it? Is it going to be linked to a particular type of publication? When is it going to be written? You've got to have it linked to each other because that's where the advantage is. That's what Nick was talking about. But it was the delivery, and the delivery now can be connected. And finally, you're going to get a lot of resistance internally and externally, but internally is going to be fears if you go down this route. And there's going to be concerns about cost, but don't worry, most of these tools are free or pretty cheap. There are going to be concerns about dumbing down, but actually a lot of the tools can help you. It can help you actually make things much more interesting and attractive and explain complexity to a much broader audience. There can be concerns about web safety, but I think that most of your information is already out there. Most of our information is already in the cloud, so to speak. So we shouldn't be too concerned about these things. And it's certainly more worrying that our information is in our offices sometimes in some of the countries in which we work. And then the best thing of all, you don't need to know anything about ICT because some of these tools that we can use are being developed by companies and by organizations who've got really good ICT teams and who are updating these resources for us as we speak. So we can rely on them for that. Okay, so Nick's now going to say the kind of things you can use, and then Waqar is going to give you an example. But if you have any questions...
Any questions, any observations? Are people interested in using mobile phones to gather panel data for research? Which is more important, communication strategy, research management? Any comments? I noticed Andrea has already tweeted this workshop. So, I'm watching you. Anyone else? No? Okay, fine. Nick? Oh, wait, there is somebody.
I think it's just a comment, but it's like how to deal with one of the most important tasks for us. For example, it's not just how to deal with these old new tools, but it's how to deal in the organization with the different generations of people that we have to manage the tools, and how to explain how it works, and how to explain to the old people that it can be useful. and how to explain the youngest people that they have to try to standardize the process, not just to have any tool that they want.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the processes, how to deal with it in an organization, how to create a process of learning about the tools and how to standardize that type of tools and processes inside of the institution.
Thank you. I think the question here is because of the fact that you have people who have a traditional way of thinking about communicating, and now we're coming through the new media, and people thinking about your website as your face, right? That's what you are identified by. Now, if you have a strategy that says, we got to have a blog where we can have an active dialogue, what about the issue of ownership of what is going to be said on that blog? Do you monitor that? How do you control? I mean, now suddenly you're going to say, no, I don't want anyone to say anything they want on my blog. So how do you, deal with this? I mean, you run a blog, so how do you deal with this conundrum, I would like to call it?
I think we can probably all... Yeah, we can roll some of those questions. We can repeat them. We can use the questions again for our next presentation and into the clinic. But how do you deal with these differences, and how do you avoid everybody doing whatever they want? Precisely the reason why we need to start thinking about a strategy, because these tools are there, and the younger generations are going to be using them more and more and more and more. 5 years from now, new people coming to your organization, they're going to be used to these tools. They're going to be what they do. So if you don't have a set of rules or set of processes, simple ones at least, to control that, then it's going to be a lot harder then, if you want. So starting with that, and then maybe start with, as I said, start with testing something, small steps. You don't have to have a complete set of strategies, but starting slowly. And and this goes back to your point. Sorry, I didn't get your name. Jen. So how do I decide? I mean, I kind of feel that by now, certainly in the UK, if I don't have a comment space, then people would not accept it, because the idea of a blog is now accepted as a place where I can comment. So if I was to not have an opportunity for comments, or I was to censor the comments, I think I would quickly be told off by my readers. And so you have to start thinking about your content, start thinking about these changes now, early on, just in case you need to make these decisions in the near future.